Details in the death of Nolan Wells, where investigators say the 18-year-old went missing on July 4th and spent the day drinking heavily. Now, that is coming from a document that was obtained by ABC News through a public records request. The Mississippi Department of Marine Resources compiled a brief list of information about Wells, and one of the first agencies to respond was them. The document said it was unknown what Wells had eaten that day, but described his alcohol intake as heavy. A private autopsy also ruled his cause and manner of death undetermined, with the official autopsy still pending.
There are witness accounts of Nolan Wells leading up to his death. And here's what we've learned. Witnesses told investigators that 18-year-old Nolan Wells had been drinking heavily with friends on Horn Island in Mississippi, according to a document with preliminary information from the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources. Police report from the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources said several friends that traveled to the island on the vessel with Nolan told authorities, quote, that when they left he was in the company of an unknown female and that he chose to remain on the island. The documented description sent on July 5 by the Marine Patrol as part of attempts to find Wells after he went missing was an email that listed basic information for Wells, including his physical description as searchers scanned the island for signs of him after he went missing on the 4th of July. There's another document ABC News obtained, and it reinforced what friends told investigators about why Wells was not on the return trip on July 4th in the boat he took to Horn Island with his friend. A police report from the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources said several friends that traveled to the island on the vessel with Nolan told authorities that when they left, he was again in the company of an unknown female. He chose to remain. Friends have said they did not abandon Wells but needed to return to shore because their boat was taking on water. ABC News obtained GPS data from the boat that Wells rode on to Horn Island. It showed the boat set off for the island around 9:56 a.m. July 4th, arrived at 11:14 a.m. The data showed the boat was stationary from that point until 4:30 p.m. At 4:31 p.m., the boat left Horn Island moving slowly, no more than 4.2 knots for nearly 3 miles. And at 5:25 p.m., the boat regains normal operation with a speed of 30 to 35 knots. It arrived on shore about 20 minutes later, again, according to the data. The official autopsy report from the State Medical Examiner's Office, the toxicology test still pending, a private autopsy commissioned by Wells' family preliminary ruled his cause and manner of death as, quote, undetermined, pending investigation. Authorities said they suspect Wells drowned. Jackson County Sheriff John Ledbetter said there was no initial indication of a crime, but he stressed that investigators were working diligently to determine exactly what occurred. Ledbetter also said the sheriff's office welcomed the family's independent investigation. So it is unknown why Nolan's phone had missing data. Mother Christine Wells Walmsley is making moves in court, though she wants to get her hands on her late son's social media account, the mother and son pictured there. TMZ obtained court documents filed by Christine on Tuesday. They reveal she fired off subpoenas to the companies behind Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Life360, Snapchat, and TikTok. During the search, Christine used Life360 to track Nolan's phone and compared the location history between Snapchat and the tracking app, but found that the data did not match. The subpoenas request the social media companies turn over all materials and information related to Nolan's account, and those subpoenas also request all IP addresses tied to friend events on the account. Information that identifies or may be used to identify any party messaging in a conversation with the account, all posts, stories, chats, messages, DMs, all photos, video recordings, contents, text files, GPS data, friend list history, other information stored. So that is a comprehensive list. That is a mother backed by counsel who is not leaving any stone unturned. She wants to know about his final conversations. She wants to know if somebody tampered with any of it, if somebody had access to any of it, if it changed, if there are things that were said that they don't yet know that are pertinent to this investigation and the death of her son. She wants all of it. Before we go further, if you are new here, this channel breaks down real documented cases using real sources, no speculation dressed up as fact. Subscribe so you do not miss where this case goes next. Let us start with the witness accounts, because these details, according to ABC News, come directly from a document containing preliminary information gathered by the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources. Witnesses told investigators that 18-year-old Nolan Wells had been drinking heavily with friends while on Horn Island. This is an important detail to state plainly and carefully, because drinking heavily, on its own, does not explain what happened to Nolan. It does not confirm an accident, and it does not rule one out either. What it does is begin to fill in a picture of what that afternoon actually looked like for him and the friends he was with. A group of young people spending a holiday on an island, drinking, socializing, with no indication anyone anticipated anything going wrong. The same reporting includes something we have touched on before in this case, but which now carries the weight of an actual police report rather than a second-hand account. According to a police report from the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, several friends who traveled to the island on the boat with Nolan told authorities that when they left, he was in the company of an unknown female and that he chose to remain on the island. This detail appears not once, but twice in the documentation ABC News has reviewed, meaning it was not a passing remark from a single witness. Multiple friends independently gave investigators the same basic account. Nolan was with a woman investigators have not identified, and he chose, in their telling, to stay behind rather than leave with the group. If Nolan's last documented interaction on that island was with a specific person, someone who may know exactly what he said, what his state of mind was, or what happened in the time immediately after his friends left, then identifying her is not a minor detail. It may be one of the most important remaining threads in this entire case. Alongside these witness accounts, ABC News also obtained a document connected to the search effort itself, an email sent on July 5th by the Marine Patrol as part of the effort to locate Wells after he went missing. That email contained basic identifying information, including his physical description, distributed as searchers combed the island for any sign of him following his disappearance on the 4th of July. This document does not, on its own, reveal anything new about what happened to Nolan, but it confirms something worth sitting with, that by July 5th, formal search protocols were already underway, official documentation was already being generated, and Nolan's physical description was already being circulated to searchers scanning the island, all before his body was ultimately found. Now to the boat itself, because the GPS data ABC News obtained gives us the clearest, most objective timeline available in this entire case, a sequence of movements that does not depend on anyone's memory. According to that data, the boat that carried Nolan and his friends to Horn Island set off at approximately 9:56 in the morning on July 4th. It arrived at 11:14. From that point, the data shows the boat remained stationary, meaning it did not move again, until 4:30 that afternoon. Sit with that gap for a moment. Nearly 5.5 hours where the boat simply sat in place. That is consistent with a group spending the day on the island itself, exactly the kind of holiday outing this was supposed to be, rather than anything suggesting unusual boat activity during that stretch. At 4:31, the boat left Horn Island, but not in the way you might expect from a group simply heading home. The data shows it moved slowly, no faster than 4.2 knots, for nearly 3 miles. For comparison, 4.2 knots is barely faster than a brisk walking pace on land. This is not a boat leaving in a hurry. It is a boat moving cautiously, deliberately slow, for an extended stretch of nearly 3 miles. Then, at 5:25 that afternoon, the boat regains normal operation, jumping to a speed of 30 to 35 knots, arriving back on shore approximately 20 minutes later. This sequence lines up directly with something we have covered in this case before, reports that the boat experienced mechanical trouble, specifically a bilge pump failure, and was taking on water as it left the island. A boat limping along at just over 4 knots for 3 miles, before suddenly returning to full operating speed, is entirely consistent with a vessel being towed or nursed along slowly while dealing with a serious mechanical problem, before eventually being repaired or reaching calmer water where higher speed became safe again. This detail matters because it corroborates, independently, the broader account already given about why the boat left later than planned, and why Nolan's friends have said they needed to return to shore, not because they were abandoning him, but because their own boat was actively taking on water. That is an important point to state clearly. Nolan's friends have consistently maintained that they did not abandon him, but rather needed to get back to shore because of the mechanical failure the GPS data now independently supports. Whether that fully explains why Nolan himself did not return with them is a separate question, one this GPS data does not answer. It confirms the boat had a real, documented problem. It does not confirm, on its own, every detail of why Nolan specifically chose to stay behind, or what happened to him afterward. Now to where things currently stand on the forensic side. The official autopsy is being handled through the state medical examiner's office, and toxicology testing remains pending. Separately, a private autopsy commissioned by Nolan's own family has preliminarily ruled his cause and manner of death as, in the report's own language, undetermined, pending further investigation. Authorities have said they suspect Nolan drowned. Jackson County Sheriff John Ledbetter has stated there was no initial indication of a crime, while stressing that investigators continue working diligently to determine exactly what occurred. Ledbetter has also said his office welcomes the family's independent investigation, a detail worth noting, because it signals at least some level of cooperation between official and independent efforts, rather than the two sides operating in open conflict with each other. It remains unknown, as of this reporting, why data connected to Nolan's phone appears to be missing. This is a detail that connects directly to the next major development in this case, and arguably the most significant action taken by anyone connected to Nolan since his death. His mother, Christine Wells Wansley, is now taking direct legal action to obtain her son's digital history. According to court documents obtained by TMZ, filed this past Tuesday, Christine issued subpoenas to the companies behind Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Life360, Snapchat, and TikTok. This is not a request. A subpoena is a formal legal demand, backed by the authority of the court, compelling these companies to produce specific information. Here is why this particular action matters so much. During her own search for Nolan, Christine used the location tracking app Life360 to try to determine where her son's phone actually was. She then compared that location history against data from Snapchat, another platform that can generate its own location information. According to what she found, the data from these two sources did not match. Think about what that actually means. Two different digital records, each theoretically capable of showing where Nolan's phone was at a given time, produced two different answers. That is exactly the kind of unresolved digital inconsistency that would push any parent, especially one already dealing with unanswered questions about her son's death, to demand full, formal access to every platform that might hold a piece of the real answer. The subpoenas themselves are extraordinarily comprehensive. They request that these companies turn over all materials and information connected to Nolan's accounts, including all IP addresses tied to friend requests or connections on the account, information that identifies or could help identify anyone who messaged with the account, all posts, all stories, all chats, all direct messages, all photos, all video recordings, associated content and text files, GPS data, friend list history, and any other stored information these platforms maintain. That is not a narrow request for a single conversation or a specific date. That is a demand for the complete digital footprint of her son's final period of activity across nearly every major platform he might have used. It is worth naming plainly what this represents. This is a mother, backed by legal counsel, refusing to leave a single possibility unexamined. She wants to know about Nolan's final conversations. She wants to know whether anything was altered, deleted, or accessed by anyone else. She wants to know if there is information sitting inside these platforms right now that has not yet been connected to the broader timeline investigators and her own independent team are trying to build. That is not an unreasonable position for a mother in her circumstances to take. It could be that Nolan drowned, exactly as authorities currently suspect. It could also be that he drowned and there is more to the full story than that single fact captures, whether accidental or something else entirely. Determining which of those possibilities is accurate is precisely what all of this, the witness accounts, the GPS data, and now this sweeping digital records request, is ultimately working toward. None of this evidence exists usefully in isolation. Witness accounts alone cannot tell you the full story. GPS data alone cannot tell you the full story. Digital records alone cannot tell you the full story. What actually moves an investigation like this forward is bringing all of it together, building a real chronology, and having forensic specialists examine each piece, not as an isolated fact, but as part of a connected sequence of events. Attorney Ben Crump, representing the family, is working to ensure that happens. And based on everything she has done so far, refusing to accept an incomplete answer, tracking her son's location herself, comparing conflicting data sources, and now legally compelling 6 major technology companies to hand over everything they have, Nolan's mother is clearly working toward that same goal and shows no signs of stopping. It is also worth addressing directly something that could easily get misunderstood as this story continues to develop. The pending toxicology results do not automatically mean anything definitive on their own. If those results eventually show that Nolan had been drinking, that does not automatically mean he was legally or meaningfully intoxicated. And even if intoxication is eventually confirmed, that does not automatically mean it caused his death, or that nothing else happened during his final hours. Toxicology results provide one specific piece of information, and like every other piece of evidence in this case, they will need to be considered alongside everything else, not treated as a single, final answer capable of closing this case on its own. So, where does this leave us? We now know witnesses have told investigators Nolan had been drinking. We know he was reportedly last seen with a woman investigators have still not identified. We know the boat's own GPS data confirms nearly 5.5 hours of stillness at the island, followed by a slow, cautious departure consistent with a real mechanical failure, and we know that failure lines up with what his friends have said all along. We know his official and independent autopsies remain unresolved, with toxicology still pending. And we know his mother is no longer waiting for information to arrive on someone else's timeline. She is compelling it, directly, through the courts, from every major platform her son ever used. We will continue following this case as those subpoenaed records are produced, as toxicology results are finally released, and as investigators work to identify the woman multiple witnesses say Nolan was with in his final known moments on that island. We will bring you those developments the moment they are verified, and not before. That is everything we have for you on this update. If you want to stay informed as this investigation continues to unfold, make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss what comes next. Drop a like if you believe this mother deserves every answer she is fighting for, and let us know in the comments what you think that mismatched location data might actually mean. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next update.